Hi everyone, my name is Dustin Miles. I'm excited to have Scott Kidd here today. Got excited to meet him and learn more about him. And we were chatting beforehand, and just didn't realize we both went to UT Austin. So hook 'em horns. But
Go Longhorns.
yeah, Scott, if you could introduce yourself, and we'd love to learn more about you.
Um, how you doing? Thanks, Dustin, for having me on. I appreciate it. My name is Scott Kidd. Been a yacht captain for over the last 20 plus years, and then been doing multifamily real estate for the last five or so. Mostly doing syndications and working on my own fund at this point. Going forward, that's going to be helpful for me. But I kind of got started because working on the yachts, it's kind of an unstable, well, it is an unstable business, here today, gone today. If the economy takes a dip, the boss's business takes a dip, or they just decide not to have the boat anymore, they just lay it up and all the crew will let go. And that's usually includes all of us. They might have a little bit
Oh,
of a
wow.
skeleton crew or something like that just to hold it while it sells or what have you. But anything, we're working basically on a toy. So I've always sought out things that could make passive income. And it started, as when I bought my first house, as the family grew, I bought another house and rented that one. And then, kind of went from there. And the original plan was, to buy a few houses, one every so often, and then do that. But then I found out about multifamily and commercial real estate, and then I kind of got hooked because a friend of a friend, a friend of mine was telling me that he had bought and sold a 46 unit in Houston, Texas, and he had made a certain amount of money and in 2 years. And I asked him, I said, well, you can do that. And he said, well, yeah, 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 you can do it. I can do it. Anybody can do it. I did it. So it's not rocket science, just, you just gotta, do your due diligence and, find the right property, right time and know what you're getting into. And so that was kind of the bug that hooked me. And then I started learning a lot about it. And then, you know, took a while for me to get my head around it, even though it's not quite all that much different than having a single family rental portfolio of a few houses. There's still the same things. You got property management, asset management, and all those things that go into it.
Awesome. Well, cool. Yeah, I started kind of similarly. Yeah, I start. Most people I think start doing single family. That's what I did. Ended up getting about six of them, and did some rentals and some flips out of that. But yeah, I started for me kind of similarly. I started to meet people that had a 50 unit and a 100 unit. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I started too. I started doing single family, and then met a guy that had I think it was a 22 or 24 unit in Lawton, Oklahoma, and I was blown away that he's just a normal guy, had regular job, and he bought this deal up there. And then I just kept meeting more people, 50 unit, 100 unit, 200 unit. And so it was, from there I was like, oh, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it, So anyways, that's awesome. Did you join any different groups? Did you hire a coach, have partners? Like how'd you
I,
kind of get
the,
into the multifamily space? Because from the outside, now knowing what I know now, I'm like, oh, no big deal. But before that, before I had gotten into the space, I mean, that was a huge task. Like, can I even do this? And
yeah.
so just kind of curious how you kind of got into multifamily.
Well, the learning curve was pretty big because there's a lot that goes into it. But I did like yourself. I went to a lot of meetups and networked, and luckily Bigger Pockets was around and YouTube and all that stuff where I learned as much as I could, read as many books as I could, and tried to meet as many people as I could. I actually met my first partner at a meetup, which I highly recommend because the first about 10 or so meetups I went to, it was they were all trying to sell me something. They funnel you to the back of the room, buy your course, buy your book,
Yeah. Yeah.
buy your this, buy your that, get on a call with us, my coaching program, this and that. And that was pretty frustrating and discouraging, because I wanted to learn, and I wanted to meet other people, but none of the people in the room were really trying to teach me anything unless I bought their course or bought their stuff. And then
Mhm.
I said, well, at one point I just said, well, let me just keep going. I'll go to another one. And I ended up meeting a future partner at one of the meetups. And
Oh wow.
her meetup was really good. It was just people kind of hanging out, having some drinks and eating and talking about what they're doing and, what their goals are and how to do this. And they're all helping each other. And I came to find out the realization that I can't do it by myself because multifamily and commercial real estate is a team sport. It's not single family. You can do it by yourself, with maybe some help here and there, but depending on how big your portfolio is. But and I met my first partner. I did a JV with her on a 13 unit, and then we had an 8 unit. And during that time, I became LP in the syndication, joined a few masterminds, and got some coaching along the way, and I did some business and personal development coaching, so that was really something that really accelerated everything more. Not really my growth or my education was accelerated the fact that, hey, I can do this, kind of like what you
Hmm.
were just saying, that because it put me around all these other people that were doing more, way more than I even thought of or it was possible. And it was funny to me because the first captain's job I had, I worked for a very senior developer that had been building homes since the 50s,
Wow.
and apartments and housing schemes, commercial property and stuff. And what they did was they had a lot. I had everyone in the company on the boats, from the maintenance crews to the construction guys to the investors. And I just thought, it was just a few people that had a lot of money putting money together and buying it. And it kind of is before the Jobs Act came out, it was
Hmm.
kind of a well-kept secret. And still to this day, I believe that most of the really high-level deals are kind of just word of mouth because they don't need to advertise, but the advertising is good because it makes it available for people like myself and people I know. I can show them and bring them into it because, there's some really huge benefits that we can all take advantage of, tax and just the returns are so much better and more consistent than, providing you choose right, than a lot of other investments.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's that Tony Robbins quote. The I think he says it. There's probably a bunch of people that say it honestly, but the power of proximity.
Yes.
And I think that's really really smart. For you and a lot of other people have done kind of something similar. You're the average of the five people you hang around, and so if you're wanting to be multifamily investor, go hang around those folks. If you're wanting to go be a runner, go hang around those folks
Yeah.
operating at high levels. So it's definitely not, there's no, magic bullet or whatever. You
No.
gotta put in the work. And sounds like you've done a bunch of different things that have kind of worked for you, personal, and then business wise and all that. So, um, I guess I was just kind of just probably more curiosity than anything else for me. So, how did you get into being a yacht captain and all that? Like that's
Well,
most like when I was coming out of school, most of the friends were either going to consulting job or Exxon or
yeah,
Ford
yeah.
or and you're yachting it up.
Well, yeah. Well, I was, we both graduated University of Texas, and after that, I
Mhm.
actually got my pilot's license, and I was planning to do that.
Oh wow.
Um, but in the mid 90s, um, the aviation industry started to really kind of not do very well. And then I had, after I got my private and was working on my instrument and commercial ratings and stuff like that, commercial licenses, the bottom started falling out of aviation and stuff. And I had friends that had been in it for 10 plus years and some even 20, and they were getting furloughed and they were telling me, look,
Oh wow.
just think if this is really what you want to do, do it, but you're going to be spending all this money and then you're definitely not going to get a job because I can't find a job and I'm your senior and I'm very experienced. So, being in Austin, Texas at that time, tech was booming and I just
Mm-hmm.
kind of fell into that and then had my own business, did a few things, and then I got hit with the dot-com bubble, late 90s, got laid off. We ended up shutting down the business and I was back in Jamaica and and when the business was failing, I had a friend of a friend that was in the Navy with his good friend of his, and he called up and said, "Well, I need somebody to work the Fort Lauderdale boat show with me. Um, would you be interested?" I said, "Well, I don't know anything about working on a boat.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
is that
That's cool.
okay?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's fine. Just got to get here." And I was like, "Okay, all right."
Wow.
I borrowed the money for the ticket. I borrowed some cash from a pocket from a good friend of mine that was there. I landed, I think, in Fort Lauderdale with $20 to my name. Well, probably that's not true. That was minus whatever it was from the business loss, but
Right. Yeah.
didn't really know. But the person that was picking me up, and then I planned on going back to Jamaica, but I never looked back, and that was, I believe, 2000. So
Wow.
it's been developed into a passion of mine. I love being on the water. I'm
Hmm.
never, I probably won't ever walk away from it, and because I love being on the water so much. I'll be doing something with the
Wow.
career, you know.
Wow. Is in as far as so as far as being a yacht captain and all that, so have you more worked for large corporations or just kind of really, ultra high net worth guys, or what does that kind of look
Yeah,
like?
it's for the most part, it's high net worth families, and people that have large trusts and large, hundreds of businesses and stuff like that, large
Oh wow.
corporations, and usually the boats are, whether owned by the corporation or they're generally not owned by the person directly. Just like real estate, it's not,
Yeah.
they have all those multitude of protection through that, and a lot of them are offshore and all kinds of stuff, and it can get pretty complicated. But yeah, I've always just worked for single families, and we do charters and stuff where the boat is by charter. I mean, it's rented out for a week, and
Right.
we take
Wow.
other families out, and that's really fun because especially if they have kids and stuff, and I have kids, and you get to take them to a lot of places that
Hmm.
you can only go to by boat, and a lot of really cool places that they can discover and see things that most of people don't get to see. So I'm
Right.
really lucky and blessed that way.
That's cool. That's awesome. And so I guess kind of turning back more towards a little bit towards multifamily. So would love to, have you been kind of been co-GP or GP, or do you fund to fund? What does that kind of look like as far as the kind of level
Structure.
of participation you've been in?
Well, I've originally I started, as an LP and it was JV on some of the smaller multifamily, and I'm still looking for those because I like those as are less complex, and
Mm.
it's only a few people, by JV I mean joint venture, which everybody has to be active in the deal.
Mm-hmm.
I got lucky that partner that I got involved with, she has a property management company. She's really
Oh,
good and trustworthy, and she speaks Spanish, and she's really experienced. So, partnering is great if you have a great partner. Great
mm,
partners that'll take you to the very next level
Yeah.
easily, and with the syndications, I got in as a co-GP, and the goal is to get to my next step is fund of funds that I can do multiple assets for, everyone else. And getting in, I kind of switched gears to as a co-GP. I started raising capital and doing investor relations and kind of mostly dealing with the capital side of, organizing the capital stack,
Hmm.
sourcing debt and equity and those type of things that I can do while I'm on the boat, because I work right now 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. I rotate in and out with
Oh,
another captain. And, when I'm on the boat, it's fine. I just, my time, I do work early in the morning, I might do a couple calls at lunchtime, and then after hours, around the boat schedule. And it can be, for the most part, it's 6, 7 days a week. Most of the time when I'm on, it's on. We don't get too much downtime because there's always stuff to do. But
right,
it's strangely interesting that I time block my time a lot better when I'm on the boat than when I'm off, because I have more
right,
time, and then I'm also, my family and stuff. So, when since I've been gone a lot of times, it's, if they want something or need something, that's first priority, for me, because that's what's most important. And from the co-GP aspect is, there's a lot of different ways you can get into deals. I invested as an LP first because I wanted to understand what the investment does. And there's a great book by Brian Burke, The Hands-Off Investor, which I recommend if whether you're going to be a GP or be an LP investor. It's really written for the LP investor, but it gives you a mindset of what, investors are looking for and what their criterias can be. And it was helpful to me just to break down a deal, just down to all the little different segments and pieces, and figure out what I wanted. And that's the thing is the hardest part, I think, is figuring out what your main goal is and going after it, because there's so many different shiny objects everywhere. Because I did that for about a year, going from mobile home parks, RV parks, you know multifamily, small multifamily, large multifamily, triple net leases, yeah, just ran the gambit. But
yep,
what I came to find out is that all these deals are relatively the same. They just have a little different nuances, but they all analyze pretty much. They're pretty similar. But
yep,
the path going forward is, was getting a few LPs under my belt and learning them, and then coming in as a co-GP to just kind of add value as to what I could do, bring capital, help out, sourcing the debt, help with the underwriting, just as much value that I could create for the team that I
yeah,
possibly could. And I still keep that mentality because I think that works well you know, with any kind of relationship in business. And it's the same thing on the yachts. We're a team, we're a crew, we all work together. If we don't work together well, if you have a bad crew, the boat's not going anywhere, or it'll be
yep,
a terrible experience for the guests. If you
yep,
if you have a good team, if you have a somewhat terrible property in multifamily or commercial real estate, you can make it happen if you have a good team. You can
right,
turn it into an okay property, or you can at least get it to where you can do something with it.
yep,
The same thing on the boats, because that's what I really enjoy about it, and all the skills I learned on the boats and stuff that a lot of them transfer over. Like, we do a lot of things. A lot of people, because they watch the show and stuff, that they think a lot of times we might just be hanging out, drinking at the bar, hanging out, or
right,
whatever. But that's probably a small percentage of it, that we get to do that in some exotic places. But a lot of times we're negotiating contracts with vendors. We're managing the asset of the
oh,
boat. We're scheduling itineraries and all the activities for the guests. We're
Oh
we're
wow.
setting up the itinerary from when the boat's going here to there to there to there, and everywhere. And we're scheduling project management of the vessel. Like the last shipyard period, we did a large amount of work, which is probably 3, 4 months worth of work in 2.5 months because we had
Oh
to
wow.
go. The timelines are always shorter.
Sure. Yeah.
You never have enough time. And the money is not so much as important. It's still important. You got to come in under budget and stuff. That's always the goal. But when you're
Yep.
under a time crunch, it makes it very tough because you just really have to throw a lot of people on it, and that as more people come on, the more it costs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I never really I just don't know that much about that world, but yeah, I mean, I think because my business partner and I always kind of talk about because we both grew up playing team sports and all that, and I think I saw you played soccer.
Yeah.
But I've played soccer since I was 4. So
Oh, cool.
I just in general, I feel like team sports translate over very well to
Yes.
multifamily. Just it's I mean it's like you said, you have a great team and everybody, it's all give and take. There's but if you end up having a bunch of egos on the team or people with bad attitudes, it can make it real challenging real quick. And it's same thing with multifamily, I think, is as long as people kind of keep their egos at the door and just we're all just kind of moving towards this one goal here. So just making it honestly a win for investors, and I think everything else kind of falls into place. So yeah, definitely did just curious real quick, did you kind of grow up playing soccer or in Houston?
Yeah, we played soccer. My brother was really good. He played on the U.S. Junior Olympic team. He
Oh
went
wow.
to trials and stuff in the '80s, and he
Wow.
traveled around quite a lot on the junior team. He tried out, but he had a lot of injuries. He had a bunch of knee surgeries, so he ended
Oh
up
geez.
because he's a goalie, and goalies are notoriously
Yeah.
they destroy themselves.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
they're the last line.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, I had a friend of mine. Fortunately I still play soccer today, and this guy that I played soccer, he grew up playing in Houston, and
yeah,
anyways, but yeah, I think he was doing well, and he got into college and played soccer and then got injured. So
yeah.
but
Any sports or when I was younger, I played them all, basketball, football, whatever was going. I really loved baseball when we moved to the States. That was one of my favorites just because, growing up in Houston, we had Nolan Ryan and, a
yeah.
lot of really good players and stuff. And it was fun because you could go to the ballpark for a couple of bucks and
Yeah.
it was nice. It was a good
Yeah.
afternoon. It was fun.
Awesome. It just kind of wrapping up a little bit. Are there any podcasts or books or anything that you'd kind of recommend to listeners, or something that you just enjoy?
Well, as far as the book, the one that I mentioned, Brian Burke's,
Hmm.
The Hands-Off Investor, I think that's a great read if you want to know more about syndication. It breaks it down very well. And podcasts, I follow the guy they call the mad scientist,
Oh
Neil
yeah.
Bawa, because he's got a data-driven approach, and he's rarely wrong. He might be close, but he'll admit that if he made a mistake or missed something, and he goes back and corrects and stuff. And there's not a lot of people that are actually that humble to where they go through and say, okay, I missed it. I was off by this much on this one, but here's what's going to happen going forward. So it's a
Yep.
very analytical approach, which I think is very helpful because I think we need more like transparency, and not necessarily in just commercial real estate, but in just everything. Like if we all
Right.
owned up to our mistakes, we could probably learn a lot faster. Because I've always said that if I was younger, well, younger me, I'd want to fail faster. That way, I could just get better quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, it's yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've heard him speak a few times and or actually quite a few times, but yeah, he's definitely his presentations are interesting to watch and read through and all that. So
Yeah.
um well
Usually
cool.
have to go through them a couple of times.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's his I do like to get the slides. Yeah, so you can kind
Yeah.
of stare at the slides a little bit. So um well cool. And how do people get a hold of you? What's the best way, email or
Uh, the,
website or
the
LinkedIn or
the best way is investwithscottkid.com. It's my website and it has all my social media links and everything on there. And LinkedIn, I'm always there. It's just my name. So
Okay. Well,
easy.
that's an easy website to remember.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people have these longer, complicated, and you're like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. I just figured the buck stops with me anyway. So I might as well, they're going to look me up anyway. So I might as well just cut to the chase.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, yeah, appreciate your time this Friday afternoon. And yeah, appreciate. So be sure everyone reach out to Scott. Go take a look at his website. He's got a huge LinkedIn following too, so be sure to connect with him there as well. And just yeah, appreciate your time, Scott.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you for having me. I really appreciate it. I had a great time. Thank you.
Yeah, take care, Scott. Thank you.